wanna stay ahead of the curve, then follow my words. All we doing, teach, train, innovate, solve, yeah. Teach, train, innovate, solve. If you wanna be ahead of the curve, then follow my words.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone, to TTIS, where we build confident, empowered educators through empathy and strategy, giving you practical tools that you can use today. My name is Tamara Gibson. I am a veteran teacher of 25 plus years, here helping you to understand the legality, the understanding behind ARDs. This is our series for this month, and we are diving right into it right now. So, have you ever thought, I wonder why this student is receiving reading support every day, while another one only gets it twice a week? Who decides that? Is there some sort of formula? Does the parents choose? Or maybe the special education teacher decides? Or is this some kind of guesswork? Well, tonight we're opening one of the most important pages of the IEP, the service page. This page is discussed thoroughly during an ARD. And my goal tonight is for you to be able to understand how the ARD committee determines said services, why those decisions are documented the way that they are, and how the federal law guides every one of those decisions. And we're going to do that strategically. My name is Tamara. Have you ever wondered why one student receives reading support every day while another one receives support twice a week? Who decides that? Is there some sort of formula? Does the parents choose? Or maybe you thought that the special education teacher decides. Or is this all guesswork? Well, tonight we're going to open up one of the most important pages of the IEP, and that's the service page. This page is discussed thoroughly during an ARD, and that's what our series is talking about for the month of June. And my goal tonight is for you to understand how the ARD committee determines said services and why those decisions are committed, documented the way that they are. See, our federal government actually decides all of those decisions, and I don't want you to be confused about that portion. So what are we going to spend our time on tonight? We're going to talk about the purpose behind the service page. We're going to answer a question that IDEA asked of us. And we're going to talk about what the contents of the service page actually are. Things like how much service they get, who's responsible, and so much more will be detailed within these pages. And again, I hope that you are strapped in your seat and you're ready to go. If you have not subscribed to our station, this is a great time to do so. Hit the subscription button and the notification bell so that you don't miss another opportunity to learn more about ARDs. And yes, I primarily talk to those that are preparing for the special education exam, but this information is universal. You're going to have students with IEPs in your classroom, and you're going to need to know how to properly prepare, read, and understand the documents that are given to you in regards to their services. And this is a great place to start. And speaking of starts, this is exactly what the service page, being more than just a schedule, is all about. Sometimes we use that phrase, schedule, and it is a schedule, but it's much more than that. See, this part documents the educational program that the ARD committee has agreed to provide. And the federal government, as I said before, has decided for us what we need to identify. So we have to identify the special education services, the related services, the supplementary aids and services that are going to go along with it. If there are going to be any program modifications, and of course, who is the personnel that will support this? Because everything that we're discussing tonight comes directly from the federal law idea. And the service page exists because it exists. So what question are we really asking? Are they really asking us? They're asking us, how will this child make meaningful progress? This is really a big question for the ARD committee to answer. They have to connect directly to the idea, but every service should help the student do three things: advance toward their annual goals, which we're going to talk about next week, participate and make progress in the general education curriculum. That's part of another section that we're going to talk about in just a little while. And then the third thing, learn alongside their peers whenever appropriate. This is the purpose behind the service listed in the IEP. And so let's take a look at what those services actually include. Because again, we want to know the purpose and we want to understand what this looks like. This is a snapshot of the services that are designed for the student once they meet one of those eligibility requirements. And I want you to think about it in these terms, like a house. Special education services are going to be the specifically designed instruction. That specially designed instruction is what I talked about in our previous video, and I'll tag it somewhere here in order to help. But this instruction is uniquely designed for the student. I said it a lot last week. It is the reason why it is special education. Then it goes on to talk about the related services. Some examples like the child is going to receive speech, occupational therapy, maybe physical therapy, the transportation needs, and even the counseling, if that is going to be included. Those are all examples of related services. You jump over and it begins to list supplementary aids and services again. Well, this is going to support and help the students succeed alongside of their peers. It could be things as simple as a visual schedule, the technology that's needed in order to be inserted to help them, behavioral supports, and even preferential seating. But if there is a program modification, this is also where this falls. There is a big difference between modifications and accommodations. And I talked about that in a video not too long ago about STI versus accommodations. But a modification is the changes that are made to the curriculum. If there is changes made to the curriculum for the student, that is a modification. And then not last, but most definitely important piece, the support for school personnel. This section sometimes surprises new teachers, and sometimes the adults need support too. This comes in the area of maybe consultations, training that's needed, coaching, and all kinds of other supports that can be important to the service for this student. But this committee, this ARD committee that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, it knows what the students need. So the next question really becomes, how much support? Why? What's the frequency? What's the duration? What services in minutes are going to fit naturally for the student? And so the chart that I have before you just lists what idea requires us to know and a little short meaning for each one. So as I showed you that section before, it's talking about the beginning date. When will these services begin? This committee decides that. frequency, how often, the location, where is this going to occur? And then the duration. That tells me how long. That's where we get into the minutes. And not just minutes, period, for education. But remember, specially designed instruction. That's where we're going to get to our minutes. And so the question I'm often asked is really asking me about, how do you know who gets what and how for how long? Well, it's attached to the student's annual goal and what they need in order to help them to be successful. These aren't random numbers, but they are legal commitments. And this committee isn't deciding minutes. They're really determining how much SDI does this student need? How much do they need? What is going to help? And so on and so forth. So if I have an example, like a student A, let's do that. This student receives daily structured literacy, while student B is only going to need writing support and then to be only given twice weekly. So for my people who are preparing for SPED 186, this exam almost never rewards choosing the most services. It rewards choosing the most appropriate services. So think that way when you're thinking about students needing support. And this one gets it over that one. We are, as an ARD committee, determining what needs this student has. We don't have other students on our mind in that same committee room. And then we get to the point where we have to know where these services are going to be delivered. This, again, a big part of IDEA is our least restricted environment. Where is it going to be delivered? Where does this fit naturally? As you see, this is a snapshot of what the law says. You can find the full law in the section 300.320. But this short explanation says that to the extent, if any, to which the child will participate with non-disabled children in the regular classroom, that's the least restrictive environment. General education, resource, the speech room, community, you name it. The location follows the need. Not convenience, but the need. And if the student can succeed in the general education classroom with supports, should they really be removed from them? No. And so IDEA requires us to stay there in the least restricted environment. See, this law actually requires something that many educators really don't realize. And that's the reason why I like to open this part of the conversation up and help us to really understand. If a student is removed from learning alongside their non-peers, this ARD committee, they have to explain the why. Because the question isn't why are they included? The question is why aren't they? General education is the top of that. Then general education with supports. And as we go down this continuum of least restricted environment, that's the thought. The next would be resource. The next level, self-contained. We become more restricted as we go down, or even to the point where it may be a separate campus. See, least restricted environment isn't about the least amount of services, not at all. It's about providing the necessary services in the least restricted setting. So one piece that is definitely going to be required is an assessment for accommodations. The IUP also documents accommodations for state and district assessments. If there's an alternative assessment schedule, the committee must explain why. Remember, not why why they're getting it, but why aren't they? Why the general education assessment or this general assessment isn't appropriate and why the alternative assessment is. I won't be able to spend time there today because we're going to devote an entire session around more about accommodations, more about how we make these decisions, but definitely want to include that in our conversation tonight. These are our laws, and these laws are enforceable. And for those of us who are still maybe confused about why didn't they get 504 services? Why are they getting this special education? I always say the biggest difference to me is that special ed services are enforceable. They follow the law. 504 services are great opportunities and accommodations for our students that may need simple supports. But when you walk into a room for an ARD committee, you are walking into a legal binding document that talks about the care of our students. So as always, I am grateful that you landed here tonight. The information that we provide, we love to make certain that we bring everything together. And I hope that tonight changed the way that you think about the service page. It's not simply a schedule. It's not just service minutes that I have to do a check off. It's about this ARD committee, written commitment describing exactly how the student will receive a free and appropriate public education. And every service listed should answer one question. How does this help the student make meaningful progress? If it doesn't connect the service back to that student's needs, goals, or access to the curriculum, it's worth asking, why is it there? That's the mindset that I want you to develop. Not only for this exam that you're going to take, but for every ARD meeting you'll participate in throughout your career. We're gearing up again for our next episode here on Monday, June the 29th. It'll be our last conversation designated for this ARDS committee. But we're going to talk about the driving engine, those measurable goals. Those goals become the roadmap, the guide to every instructional decision documented on the service page that we talked about tonight. I am always excited to see you here, and I hope that you are preparing in a meaningful way. Our products, our services, we have plenty. Or the very first one that I'd always point people to, because to me it's the guiding force, is our Texas Blueprint. This helps you to understand what your scores say, where you should attack, what plan of measure you should go to next. And then our cohort is another opportunity for you to excel, to get the gaps filled in for whichever domain that you might be struggling with. And our next cohort starts tomorrow, the 23rd at 7 p.m. We'd love to have you. I'm going to leave all of the information in the show notes. And as always, I'm grateful that you have arrived here. Our whole company goal is to teach, train, innovate, and provide solutions. Stuff that really works. All right, everyone. I'll see you again next week, Monday. Same time, same channel. Good night.